we are looking at the cardiovascular system, the body's nutrient highway. So the purpose of the cardiovascular system, also known as the circulatory system, is to transport blood that contains nutrients and cellular waste throughout the body. Blood carries oxygen to cells for cellular respiration, and then the byproduct of cellular respiration, which is carbon dioxide, it takes that out of the cells and out of the body. So parts of the cardiovascular system, you have three main parts. You have the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood. There are three separate types of blood vessels: veins, which take blood to the heart, arteries, which take blood away from the heart, capillaries, which are small vessels that are used for gas exchange. We will talk about those in just a second. So the heart, it is located in the center of your chest, however, slightly to the left. It is a hollow structure composed of chambers, mostly muscle, and it's about the size of your clenched fist. The heart's workload is kind of varies upon, your level of fitness, your age, and your overall health. But the average adult beats about 60 to 100 times a minute. So can you calculate, knowing this, how much it would pump in a day if your resting heart rate is 60 beats per minute? All right, so the parts of the heart. The heart has four chambers. It has the right atrium, the right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricle. So if we look over here, we can see these four main chambers. So these are hollow spots that allow blood to move through them. So for the right atrium, we see that blood's going to come into the heart. This is going to be deoxygenated blood, blood that does not have oxygen in it. It's going to come in the right atrium. It's going to go through a valve here. This is the tricuspid valve, okay, to the right ventricle. When the heart contracts, it pushes that blood up through the pulmonary valve, which is just like a little opening door that lets blood in and out. And it's going to move up through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. Eventually, that blood's going to go to the lungs and come back through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium, which is now going to be oxygenated blood. Okay, so it's got oxygen on it in it for our cells. It goes through what we call the mitral valve, another little opening door to the left ventricle. The heart contracts and squeezes it through the aortic valve, up through the aorta. Okay, and the aorta sends blood away from the heart to the rest of the body. This is what's going to send that blood with that nice rich oxygen to the rest of your cells throughout your body. Okay, each one of these chambers is going to be separated by a little thin tissue called septum. And again, right here, we've got our valves. Here would be our septum. If your valves don't work right, you can have what you call a heart murmur, and that's when the blood moves back into a chamber it's not supposed to be in. And it makes a little funny sound when you listen to your heartbeat. So just another look at the heart. If we were to cut it to where we're looking at its chambers, we can see the tricuspid valve, the mitral valve, the aortic valve, and the pulmonary valve. And this just allows us to see how these little doors open to allow the blood to go through and keeps the heart functioning the way that it should. So we've already kind of talked about it, but we're going to look at the path that blood takes throughout the body. And this is kind of a complicated diagram, but I want you to look at it really quick. You can see the heart. We use blue to denote deoxygenated blood. That does not mean that blood is blue, okay? That just is another color to help us see in diagrams how the blood moves. So we can see that the blood comes in deoxygenated into that right atrium, to the right ventricle, and it goes to the lungs where it gets that oxygen that you've breathed in. It leaves the lungs back to the left atrium, through the left ventricle, out the aorta, and to the rest of the body. Once the body has gotten the oxygen, that blood moves back through the right atrium, through the right ventricle, back to the lungs, back to the left atrium, to the left ventricle, out the aorta, and all the way through again. So if we were to write it out, we're going to see that the path of blood goes like this. Deoxygenated blood is going to flow through the veins into the right atrium, through that tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, and then blood gets pushed to the veins, out the pulmonary artery. Blood then comes back from the lungs to the pulmonary vein into the left atrium, through the mitral valve to the left ventricle, okay, out the aortic valve, through the aorta to the rest of the body. And that way the rest of the body gets the oxygen. When the rest of the body gets the oxygen, it sends that deoxygenated blood back through the veins to the right atrium, the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, to the lungs, back from the lungs to the left atrium, to the left ventricle, back to the aorta. So the three vessels that we're looking at here, veins are going to be the vessel that takes blood towards the heart. Okay, and when the muscles contract, the blood is going to be forced through the veins, right? Arteries are going to take blood away from the heart. How I remember this is artery starts with an A, blood is taken away, which starts with an A, from the heart to the tissues of the body. They are large vessels, and they carry oxygen-rich blood with the exception of the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery is right here. That's what takes the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. They have very thick walls to withstand the pressure that's produced when the heart pushes blood into them. Okay. The very last vessel that we're going to look at is capillaries, and this is when small vessels are very small vessels where the gases are exchanged. So where oxygen is given to the cells and where the blood picks up carbon dioxide. And it's very important to note that these walls or these capillaries are only 1 cell thick, and they're very, very narrow. So that really does have an impact and tells you just how small those capillaries are. They're incredibly tiny compared to your veins and your arteries. All right, so that's the basics of the heart. Can you tell me the 3 separate components of your cardiovascular system, and can you tell me how blood flows through the body?